Hi, I'm Tanya Abreu, CEO of Power Up Nursing, and I am just absolutely thrilled and a little scared to be here today. And I'll tell you why. Our topic is financial first aid. And as somebody who has been in healthcare for 3+ decades, I know it's uncomfortable for myself and my hundreds of nurses friends, and now thousands of nurses in our Power Up Nursing family, that we get a little squirrely when we start talking about money and investing and saving for the big R, retirement. And, many of us think in today's economy and in today's career environment, it's impossible to be comfortable financially. And it's impossible to really understand how to invest. I was just out at an amazing Power Up nursing event at Kaiser Permanente, Northern California. And Dr. Kimberly Delbo, our Vice President of Education, did a survey, a live phone survey during her presentation on the top 8 areas of well being for people and for nurses in the room. And they ranged from physical health, emotional health, relationships, career stability, stress and resilience, finances, and things like safety. The whole kind of gamut of what we need as human beings to feel happy. And we asked nurses to rank them and what was on top of what they had, what was good in their lives, what was positive, what they were in control of. And 3 were consistently on the bottom. 3, job security, stress, and the very lowest, with 0 nurses in the room, saying financial security. They were confident that they had enough money, that they were going to continue to build their wealth, and that they could retire comfortably. 0 nurses in the room. And the room ranged from bedside nurses to CNOs. So I was absolutely thrilled to say, let's do a podcast. I want to introduce a company that you'll see a lot of with Power Up Nursing this year. It is called Mirau Capital, Mirau. You'll see it on the screen in a minute. And I have the pleasure and good luck to be able to grab his time today. Brian Mirau, who is the founder and a certified financial advisor to people with very little in their bank accounts and people with millions in their bank accounts. And I met Mirau Capital and Mirau Wealth Management last year and have been increasingly impressed with how they approach money as energy, as your emotional harmony, as what you need to feel good in your life. And it's not just about how you're investing it and how much you have. It's really about your relationship with money. And nurses do not have good relationships with money. And I'm going to invite Mr. Mirau on the screen right now so that we can begin to talk about what you can do today for financial first aid. Mr. Mirau, Brian, welcome to Power Up Nursing Podcast, Power Up Nursing Platform.
Hello, Miss Tanya. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm just happy to be here with y'all.
And I tell you, you have done 2 videos now talking to hundreds of nurses at our events that we've shown that video. And they've all responded with, where do I sign up? Because I need help. I need financial help. Now, I wanted to ask you, because you have worked with nurses and you really do believe that they're a distinct category of people with real needs that are really a lot of everyday stress, a lot of everyday trauma. We know one thing in the field of neuroscience and psychology, that people who are exposed to trauma regularly don't do well with money. Brian, talk to me about your experience doing financial assessment and planning with healthcare providers.
Well, Tanya, it's what we find that with healthcare providers so often, as many professionals do, is that they're very, very focused on what they do and in their job and in their career path, and they do an incredible job of providing to other people. We just I went through an experience with my wife here just in the last couple of months here, and it was absolutely amazing to sit in a hospital for a whole week and watch everybody in action in that hospital, and all the nurses that came in and out of her room, and it was absolutely it was like a symphony orchestra, the way everything was organized, and that was incredible. But through the years, I've worked with a lot of healthcare professionals, and they've been in different lines in the healthcare industry, and different roles. And but a common thing that I see with a lot of healthcare professionals is they're just very loving and very caring and very serving people, and they're all in when it comes to that. But then many times we'll have healthcare professionals that will come to us and say, I've done such a great job of my career and I loved what I did. But one thing I've really focused on is I've focused on taking care of everybody else, but I haven't necessarily taken care of my own self in a great way from a financial standpoint. And they have different tools to use to save money, and what I've seen with all of my healthcare clients is they've done an incredible job of setting money aside, but they really don't know about the organization of money. There's really four things that you have to really, really be efficient against when it comes with your money. And of course, the first one is taxes, and there's different ways that you can save money that can have a huge tax impact on your life, not just now, but also for that older person you're going to someday be. And then of course we got to make sure that our dollars are growing. We want to be efficient against inflation. I call that the stealth tax because it's one we really don't see, touch, or feel. Well, I guess we do now when we go to the grocery store or the gas station, but making sure that our dollars are going to be worth $1 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And it's before the last couple of years, we haven't seen inflation raise its head a whole lot. Before 3 or 4 years ago, it was running a little less than 2%. We weren't feeling it real bad, but the last 3 or 4 years here, it's raised its head up, kind of like what we saw back in the 70s and the 80s. Back then, when we had double-digit inflation, and we're feeling it when we go to the grocery store and we go to the gas station, and so we want to make sure our buck still has a buck worth of purchasing power. And then the third thing you got to watch out for are these things that we call unnecessary fees and expenses, because we'll see in a lot of different accounts, especially in a lot of the retirement accounts, the Section 400 accounts like the 403Bs, the 457 plans, the 401As, the 403Ks, or the 401Ks. We'll see a lot of unnecessary fees and expenses inside a lot of these accounts, depending on the financial.
You're trying to manage your money, okay?
Yeah, you're trying to manage it, but then you've got, you want to be efficient and make sure you're not dripping nickels and paying unnecessary fees, and then probably most important is you want to make sure that you're efficient against risk. Especially as we start getting closer to that retirement threshold, what we don't have is the luxury of having time on our side to make a financial mistake and have time to overcome that. So that's why you got to have good balance inside your account. And so with a lot of our healthcare professionals that we work with, we'll see that that are getting ready to retire, that they've done a good job, getting ready to retire, but they don't have a lot of coordination, and then try to figure out, well, what do I do with this now, and how do I take this bucket of money that I've accumulated over my whole life, and how do I turn that into a paycheck? Because when you're working, you know where your paycheck's coming from. You get up, go to work, earn your paycheck, pay your bills, and you live life that way. Well, when we retire, one of the biggest challenges, okay, so now I'm not getting that paycheck from the hospital or from the doctor's office anymore. Where's my paycheck going to come from? And now you've got to make sure your bucket of money is going to be there and last longer than you do. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we see with nurses getting ready to
And it's never too early to start. I just want to reiterate, and I put it up on the screen for those that are watching as well as listening, the 4 things that you need to become aware of to become money wise, or Mirau money wise: saving taxes, protecting against or understanding stealth inflation, unnecessary fees and expenses, and risk threshold. Now, I'm going to stop you for a second, because I asked at a nursing event for people to write down their feelings about money and why they don't pick up the phone to call somebody like you, Brian, or to call a money advisor that's on your team. And this was written in one way or another by 6 nurses out of 70. I'm going to show it to you. And it's, I am embarrassed by my inability to save money and build wealth. Going to read it again. I am embarrassed by my inability to save money and build wealth. Now, we are not talking about people close to retirement. We're talking about people in the room, 30, 40s, maybe early 50s. They're not feeling the stress of, I only have 5 more years to work. And they're saying, look, I know that I messed up. I know that my finances are disorganized. I know that even though I'm making $90,000 a year, I've got $4,000 saved. That's what one person wrote. I'm embarrassed to even go to somebody like Mirau and sit down. Can you talk to us? No, what is the starting place? Now, I know that we have this thing that we've set up for people just like that aren't going to be judged. They're going to come to you and your team, Brian, and say, I make $150,000 a year and I'm in debt and I don't have savings. I need your help and I know I can do this. What are we going to do for these people? And for me too. I mean, I've been up and down financially all my life. I'm the first person to say, look, I've made millions, lost millions, had to borrow to cover electricity. How do I stop this cycle of financial ignorance without feeling like I'm not a great human being?
Well, first of all, we know hindsight's always 2020. And what happened yesterday does not matter. It's just kind of like, wherever we are, when we choose to start something, we are where we are. And it doesn't matter whether we're where we need to be, or if we're setting out a game plan of where we want to be. And so it's so important is to take the very, very first step. Just like if we're choosing to say work out or start any major objective in our life, the first and the very hardest part is that very first step. And then
consistency. I've heard you talk about consistency. And I used to weigh a lot. I used to weigh 340 pounds. I'm down to 168-ish.
Well, congratulations.
And yeah, well, it took me 20 years, a lot of stops and starts, but I think it's similar to my problems with money. And I didn't get successful until I learned to take that step and be consistent.
Well, and you just hit the nail on the head. It's all about our own personal philosophy, and if the first thing we have to do is, if things don't seem to be going right, what I've learned a long time ago, we got to look in the mirror, okay, and change our own personal philosophy towards whatever we're trying to accomplish. Because it's real easy to blame, to have excuses of why this didn't happen, why that didn't happen, and at the end of the day, it's pretty much what I have found through my life, and I've been on a weight journey like you, Tanya, and it's sometimes there's been successes, sometimes there's been failures, but what we do is we always try to learn from our failures and learn and grow. We don't always somebody told me a long time ago, failure is not failure. It's nothing more than an opportunity to learn and grow. And then, so therefore, if we learn and grow from our failures, and then we seek out we seek out solutions. We seek out solutions on how we're going to start making a change. If we, whatever the change is in our life, and especially when it comes to our finances, now what we find that it's not any different than any other habit. You just have to decide what you want to do, and at the end of the day, we got to make sure we got more money coming in, we got going out, and if we don't, then we got to take a hard look at what's going out and figure out, well, is that necessary? And then also the other major point when it comes to your finances is it's real easy to fail, because so many times we'll try to pay all our bills and live our lifestyle, and then we're going to save it and invest what's left. Well, there's never anything left, because there's always something out there taking our dollars. And so the first step is make a decision to pay yourself first. You have to pay yourself first, and pay yourself just like you pay a mortgage payment, just like you pay a car payment, just like you pay a payment when you go to the grocery store. So there's got to be there's got to be an account set up to pay, to start paying ourselves first, because, and again, that's the first step you have to do. And really you want to, as you start this process, you want to make sure that you want to start with something you can do, because it's got to be something easy for you to do, because if things are difficult, then we have a human nature tendency of, well, that's not going to be the path of least resistance. It's going to be hard, and that's when it's easy to experience failures. But find something that you can do, and whether it's we think, well, it's what if I just start saving $1 a day? Well, $1, if you save $1 a day, then that's $1 you didn't save yesterday. If you can do more than that, and you want to start this with something that's really, really easy to do, and you want to try to set up as many things on automatic as you possibly can, because again, it's once $1 hits our hands, it's real easy to go and spend that dollar, versus if that dollar never hits our hands, then most of the time we'll never miss that dollar. Let me give you an example of that. So if we have company sponsored plans, or where they take money out of our paycheck, okay, before it gets in our hands and before it goes in the bank, typically we don't miss that. Just like when they hold out our taxes, and we don't like it when they reduce our paycheck, but you've got to set things up on automatic, or if you get direct deposits into your bank account, set up direct, what they call EFTs, or electronic funds transfers, where money goes out of your account automatically without coming through your hands. And so many times we'll let time get by us, and then we turn around and look and say, wow, we've got a little bit of money in the bank, or we've got a little bit of money in our account. And then once we do that, and again, it's just like getting everything else in our life, is getting started. And once you get started, then you're going to start to see, hey, you know what, I've got a little money in my account. And then we're going to start seeing wins with that, and that's going to give us encouragement to continue to maintain that discipline to set money aside for that older person we're going to someday be. Does that kind of make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And just to hear you talk is just, you have a really soothing style, and I think that is so important to those of us. And I know I'm not alone, that find the whole conversation about money very uncomfortable and very, very unnerving. I want to, before we get too far into this conversation, point out on the screen, www.myrocapital.com/power-up is a landing page, where you can go in and make an appointment with Mr. Mirau and his team with no judgment, without needing to bring all kinds of documentation to the table, to come and really lay it all bare. There's nothing they haven't heard. There's nothing they can't do to help. And I think that is where all of us need to begin to put our feet forward, no matter where we are in the year. We're recording this right before the year. This is the time. I know you all have an extra 20 Christmas presents that you haven't bought yet. You know what? Only buy 10 of them. The other 10 people will survive. And, think about how this consistency of saving. I'm raising Mr. Mirau, I'm raising my grandkids, and I got them each these green cards, and I watch them as some of them, like I'll give $30 for their week of if they do all of their chores. I see that Cody will take $5 and put it in savings, where Gracie will just keep it all, and then she'll buy a big purchase and then she'll get upset because she sees that Cody has $50 or $70 in savings that he doesn't access because he doesn't really know how to access it. And so I'm saying, wow, I got to learn how to do this better. But tell me, if I'm a nurse right now, or anybody listening to this, and I want to talk to you, what do I need to do to get ready? Like I've talked to people on your staff, and they said, the secret to all this is to get organized. Can you talk a little bit about what you're going to do with somebody who schedules that half an hour with Mirau?
Yeah, so in the very first visit, we just kind of get to know each other and talk about what you're trying to accomplish, kind of where you are in life. We'll actually open up the hood and do an analysis on everything that you have, and we look at what's you're spending, what's going out versus what's coming in, and do an overall look at your assets, but most of all talk about what you're trying to accomplish, what's important to you in life. Is it important to recreate? Is it important to are you a workaholic? You just want to work all the time, and really try to understand who you are as an individual, and then once we understand that, and then we talk about what you're trying to accomplish, then we look at your entire picture. Like I said, we've the four inefficiencies that we see is inefficiency against taxes, inflation, market risk, and unnecessary fees. See if you're dripping nickels in your current plan. We'll do an in-depth analysis. And then what we do is we've got some tools. I don't have a crystal ball, but I got the next best thing to it. I've got a tool that we use called a retirement analyzer. And it's going to help us. It's going to look at those four things that we find inefficiencies in, and we're going to plug your entire financial world into this thing, and it's going to help us map out. Okay, if you say, Brian, I want to retire when I'm 50 or 55 or 65 or 70, whenever that target date is, we'll go out there and we'll look at this and show you, is that something that you're even able to do, or are you going to run out of money before too early? Because the last thing we want to do is we want to start that retirement journey and get halfway across the bridge and say, oops, well, we've made a mistake. And so we look at all of these things and really understand what you're trying to accomplish. And then once we understand all that, then we look at ways, kind of like if you go, when we go and see a medical professional, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to, if I say, doctor, I'm sick, they're not just going to write us out a prescription. They're going to check our height and our weight and poke and prod on us, run all the tests, and then look at all of that information and then say, well, here's what's wrong and here's what you got to do to fix it. Well, we kind of do that from a financial standpoint as well.
The charting, right? The charting. Nurses know that when all the data and all the vitals are scattered or confusing, it's time to rechart. It's time to really look at the history, where we are now, and what's the best path of treatment.
Absolutely. And we do the same thing from a financial standpoint, and really try to understand what the individual nurse and healthcare professional is trying to accomplish. And then we're able to be like the medical professional, like y'all, where, okay, so here's the game plan. Here's what you've got to do if you want to get better. If you've got this illness and you want to get this better, just like I was talking about with my wife, she had a heart condition that we didn't even know about. Had we not had done the testing and the exams that we did earlier in the year, we would have never known about it. And and of course, the part of the problem we have is if you have a heart problem, all the medical folks say you got about 2 hours to get it dealt with. Otherwise, you find yourself in a pickle and you're in trouble. Well, where we live, we can't get to any facility within 2 hours to get something like that dealt with. So because of the testing and because of the all the work that went on, we were able to identify what the problem was. She had no symptoms, had no heart damage or anything. It was just found out purely because of the testing, and which caused her to end up having to have bypass surgery. So it was we just don't know because of that testing, how it well, I do know it probably saved her life and didn't get her in a pickle in a bad time when you don't have many choices because of where we live and things like
And I
that.
love this metaphor for finances. Like, so many of us don't see how we're being blindsided and what we're not taking care of. And, we always talk about peace of mind in your health. When you go to the doctors, when you get the blood test, you have peace of mind. How do you have peace of financial mind? And you've talked about that. I remember hearing you say nurses deserve financial peace. Start with one simple action this week. So, okay, so talk to our listeners. What should they do right now? Yes, we want them to call. Yes, we want them to talk to us. But what can they do without us right now? One simple thing this week.
Well, the one of the first things you can do is, the first step you can take is check your beneficiaries on your accounts. That's a simple thing. It doesn't take any effort. And why is that important? Because if many times when we sit down and we look at beneficiaries on accounts, I can't tell you how many times we will find them to be two spouses ago, or we'll find deceased
Oh my
spouse.
gosh, yes.
And that stuff is so easy to do. But also remember this: the things that are really, really easy to do are also real easy not to do, because it's not by intention. It's just because we get busy and things get out of sight and out of mind. And so that's one thing that you can do. You can set up an automatic transfer if you're not saving money. Set up an automatic transfer out of your checking account into a savings account. There's still high yield savings accounts out here that I know money markets that are still paying between 3 and 4%, even with the interest rates starting to drop like they are. Or if you have a work sponsored plan like a 403B or 401k, if you have those types of plans and you don't participate, you want to participate in those, especially if you're getting matches from your employer, because that's absolutely free money. And if you don't participate, you're leaving money on the table. And so that's one thing, a couple of things you can do, check your beneficiaries, make sure they're absolutely accurate, and then start just set up some type of automatic transfer. Like I said, if it's a 403B, which is what most healthcare professionals use in hospitals and so forth, or if you're with a doctor's office, it could, a lot of our physician clients, they'll have 401ks set up in their firm, and so whatever it is, just start, okay, and start small. It doesn't have to be grandiose, but just get in the habit of starting and getting one thing going.
That's beautiful. I have a couple more questions. I know we're going to do another one of these, and that's exciting. So we'll have people watch this and give me questions. And I may actually invite some nurses on to our next one that have listened to this. But in the meantime, I have a question. People ask all the time. So many people surprise us. They're making $50,000, $60,000 and they retire with $500,000. We have no idea how they did that. Then we know there are entrepreneurs that are bringing in millions and they still don't have enough to retire. I guess what I want to ask you, you've worked with thousands of people. And I guess what I want to ask you is, in your opinion, I mean, this sounds a little, but what's the secret to making and keeping millions of dollars? Like, what do you see consistently among different types of people?
Well, the main thing, probably one of the best financial lessons I learned in my life, I learned back when I was in college, but I didn't learn them in the walls of the university. I learned them from Mr. Crane, who was an entrepreneur, a fellow that had a machine shop. And when you're in college, I wasn't one of those lucky kiddos that got checks from home. I had to work my whole time through college. I was a student athlete as well. And but
What'd you do? What'd you play? What'd you play? I'm interested.
I was an old football player. Is what I did.
Oh, very cool.
But anyway, I never forget when I'd go down and Mr. Crane was one of my jobs he had a machine shop, and I'd go down and sweep his shop up and take his trash out. And he would always be down there, and he would always ask me how football's going. I say, it's fine, Mr. Crane. And he says, how's college going? I said, it's going good, Mr. Crane. And he said, and he'd always share with me his most important financial lesson. And Mr. Crane had a 5th grade education, but he had a 7-figure net worth. And this was back in the 1970s.
Wow.
And Mr. Crane probably never made more than $30,000 a year. And you think, well, how did he inherit a lot? No, he didn't inherit a lot. He didn't inherit a dime. And he told me 2 things. He said, first of all, he said, if I didn't have $1 in my pocket, I wouldn't spend it. And so he was saying, I don't go out and borrow a bunch of money. And the other thing he said, if I made $1, I made sure to save myself a quarter for hard times. Because he said, if you live this thing called life, there's going to be hard times. There's going to be things that pop up that you're going to need money for. The point that he was making is, no matter how much you make, I mean, as long as you just become disciplined, and you treat your money just like an eating habit, just like a workout habit, just like because we develop habits in our life, and some good habits, some bad habits, but what we find is where we spend most of our time and what we focus on all the time, that's what's important to us. And so if saving money is important, then you just need to be focused on that. And the first thing is just if you're like Mr. Crane said, if you don't have money in your pocket, don't spend it. The world doesn't tell us that today. What the world tells us is to buy it today and pay for it tomorrow. And we have these things called credit cards.
And now you just wave your phone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You don't even need a credit card anymore. You're right. And pay for stuff but then you got to pay that bill when it comes in. And the people that I see that have had financial success, first of all, they don't like owing anybody any money. Okay. And they also have a commonality is if they don't have money in their pocket, they don't spend it. And then they also pay themselves first. And so they always try to make sure they've got, like I said, if you've got a retirement account or if you've got anything, if you don't have any of that stuff in your work, then when you get your paycheck in, set up an automatic deposit into your savings account or into any account that's going to be growing. And you want to take advantage of the magic of compound interest in time. The compound interest, Einstein called it the 8th wonder of the world. So if you've got time on your side and you have compound interest, your money can grow. And that's how Mr. Crane became a net worth of over seven figures. So
that's an amazing story. I want to kind of wind us down because we know people are busy, and I want them to hear the most important thing. I've put this up enough that everyone knows how to get that assessment, that we call it financial first aid for nurses, because the metaphor that Mr. Mirau came up with that I absolutely support and espouse is, as you treat your patients, looking at their vital signs, looking at their numbers, not judging where they are and doing everything to get them better than when they came to you, is what Mr. Mirau and his team are promising. They will get you better than when you go to them, as long as you do a little bit of sharing of those vitals and work to improve them. I want to say that this is, however, one of the most important things that I think we can promise. And that is that, let me get it up here because I did write it down. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. Sorry. It's financial planning without pressure. I've gone to these meetings, and I won't talk about the names of them. I've gone to sit down with financial planners at very conservative organizations, and I have left feeling like I have to hide things from them. I don't like the way they approached. And I can tell you from working with Mirau Capital and the team that I've met so far, you won't get that. And if you do, reach out to me at Tanya@powerupnursing.com and give me that feedback because it's important. I would love that feedback from you after you reach out to www.myrocapital.com/power dash up. I'll put it up before we sign off. But realize this: financial planning does not have to feel like pressure and anxiety and inadequacy. That's the word I've been searching
Absolutely.
for. Inadequacy. That is, a nurse said that when I was down at Jackson, because they were, Mirau Capital was a part of, sponsor of one of the events, and they asked about it, and they said, I just feel so inadequate when it comes to my own money. I feel inadequate.
Mhm.
Wow, that's a powerful word, and you'll help us with that, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, let me share one more little quick story, Tanya. I was
Please.
actually with a physician this week, and she came in, and her and her husband, and they were kind of at ground zero. Been in the medical arena for several years, but we're absolutely kind of starting from scratch. And we went through and visited and figured out what they were trying to accomplish. And but when it was all said and done, she says, we've driven by your office 4 times, and I would not let my husband stop because I was afraid to go in there. And he finally made us turn around and come in. And she says, this is the most, this was, I was worried about a big bad bear inside, and this is absolutely not the case. You've made this where I can understand it. I don't think things need to be complicated and confusing in order to be effective and efficient. I'm all about keeping things simple. I like simplicity, and that's what she told me when she left. She says, "You know what? I'm absolutely at peace. I get this now." And she said, I'm a pretty good doctor, but when it comes to this stuff, she says I'm oblivious. But she says, the way you have taught me, she says, I feel like I know a little bit about this now, because it's all about education, and because this
That's
is.
a perfect ending. That's
Yeah.
exactly, and that's a doctor, and it's all that same daily stress, and you're and nurses too, in a field that has tremendous respect from everyone, and people think, oh, they make money, they have it going on, and so when you go into a financial planner, the assumption you think is going to be the same. Here's a doctor and her husband, and oh, they're doing well. And that's simply not the case. I've worked for two
Absolutely.
doctors in the past 48 months that are absolutely bankrupt,
Yep.
crash,
Yep.
gone,
Yep.
personal and business cash, gone. It's
Yep.
not you, it's not a personal failure. And that's the beautiful thing. Falling and rising, whether it's weight loss or saving for a wealthy, comfortable retirement, or even things like alcoholism and drug addiction, it takes a little bit of failure, a lot of failure, and a lot of comeback. And that
Amen.
word consistency, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just remember, it's a cinch by the inch.
Oh, I love it. A cinch by the inch. And I am so grateful to have your level of not just financial consultant, but human being on our Power Up podcast. This will get out, it'll be evergreen. If you're watching this and 20 people that you want to share this with, please put it on your LinkedIn, put it on your social media. The message is simple: save money, make it an easy, joyful part of your life, no matter where you are now. You're never too fat to get skinny, and you're never too sad to get your life back. So I'm very, very thrilled, happy to have you here, Mr. Mirau, and I hope to see you again. I know we'll see you again in a month for part 2 of this conversation.
Ms. Tanya, thank you for having me. Y'all have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye now.